You're listening to the Mike on the Right podcast.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Mike on the Right podcast. I'm your host, Mike Neal, and this is episode 43, May 11th, 2026. And as always, I'm broadcasting from the heart of the heartland in central Indiana, the crossroads of America, the great Hoosier state. Continue to like, share, subscribe, 5-star ratings, whatever you can do to continue to tell your friends, especially now that we are back and you can listen to all episodes. You can watch all episodes. MikeOnTheRight.com will take you to all your favorite streaming locations, video, audio, and otherwise. Thank you for coming back to my episode after a long break. After having our twins, it has been an incredible yet challenging journey to go from 1 to 3. Also, our babies were a little bit premature, and so that has brought obviously some very minor, but needed a lot of focus on those complications. And so I have not had time between work and church and family and everything else to come and record a podcast for you. But now I'm back and now I'm committed, and we are 1 year old, even though my full intention was to make it to 52 episodes by the end of our first year. That simply did not happen with the birth of our twins. And you know what? That's okay. I'm so glad that you're here now, and I'm so excited to be back behind this microphone. We're going to talk about 3 things today. I'm going to start with kind of the future of the show and kind of the way I've shifted things in my brain when it comes to politics. Then we're going to get into the primary election results in the great state of Indiana. And then we're going to talk about the midterms in Indiana and beyond, what's coming up, what's new, what have you. And you can see behind me if you're watching the video, yes, my Indiana flag is up under that flag, but it is race month in Indiana, the greatest spectacle in racing, the Indianapolis 500, coming at the end of this month on Memorial Day weekend. I'm so excited to be going again and to bring a great friend of mine with me for him to experience it for the first time. But that flag is going to be up there for the month of May. And of course, the light underneath has turned green. Green means go. We only go in Indiana. We only go at the Indy 500. So let's talk about the show first. I am fully committed to weekly coming to you again to discuss all of the things related to politics, government, and culture in Indiana and America. But one of the things that, and this is going to segue into the primary elections in Indiana, I am a Bible-believing Christian. I believe there are times to tell the truth, to do so firmly and lovingly, but and compassionately, but not sugarcoating truth. And I have decided when I started this show to do that. And I've continued to see how politics has. We always talk about the de-evolution, just how things devolve. And I've seen it no more than in Indiana for the first time in a long time, how nasty politics can be. How it turns off many, many people in our state and our nation. And I never want to be the guy that doesn't tell the truth. I never want to be the guy that's called a rhino, that I'm not a conservative. I am a Bible-believing, gun-toting, Bible-quoting Christian. My knuckles drag. I am on the right side of right, not the crazy right that people espouse to. I believe I'm a true conservative in limited government and protection of life and the nuclear family, all of those things. But that doesn't mean that there isn't room in the Republican Party for any different variations of that. But at the end of the day, that's who I am, and that's what I'm going to talk about. But also, we spend a lot of time sometimes in the show and as people in politics just tearing down everything and everyone. I want this show to be a competition of ideas. Now, I know that I'm the only voice. I don't know if I'll ever bring a guest on this show or not, but I always want to say, here are the facts, and then here's my opinion about it. And I want to recommit today to focus on that. Yeah, there are times where I get upset at Republicans and Democrats. Sometimes I get a little heated. There's been some episodes that have been pretty heated, and I've had friends text me and say, whoa, man, I had to turn the radio down a little bit when I was listening to you in the car. I don't ever want to be someone, though. I want to show passion, but I want to speak in truth. And that's what this show is going to continue to be about. We're not going to sugarcoat truth, but we're also not going to lay attacks on people. And that's what I want to go right into this primary election in Indiana. This is, in my political career, the nastiest election that I have seen in Indiana. Now, that does not mean that there have not been far worse, maybe in the time that I've been in politics now since 2010. This is 2026. Do the math, 16 years. This is my 16th, 17th year in the political spectrum. And I've come across some trying races, some tough races, some races that, people are throwing a lot of negative ads. But there was such a conglomeration of negative ads in Indiana this time around. And a lot of that was driven by, for those of you who maybe aren't from Indiana, when Indiana did not decide that they refused to redistrict mid-cycle, within the time census to census, the state Senate decided not to do that. The House passed it, sent it on, the Senate killed it. Now, you can sit here and tell me, yes, I think we should have mid-cycle redistricting and we should gerrymander the districts because nobody else is playing by the rules. And I would agree that no one else is playing by the rules. You could sit here and say, well, I do believe that we should draw districts that more reflect what everyone else is doing, but I think we should do it at the right time, in 2030, 2031, when the next census comes out. That's valid. And there's a group of people say that, no, we shouldn't be doing that at all. Indiana's maps are a model. And they've been defended in courts, and the model of actually following the rules is what we want to do in Indiana. And I'll tell you what, all pieces of all three of that is true. Let me tell you my position, and then I want to talk about these races and what happened. My position was right in the middle. I firmly believe that Indiana has model maps, but that nobody else is playing by those rules. There are a couple independent commissions, like in California, whatever, and that's fake. Nothing's independent. Don't pretend like they are. Because very clearly, the voters can just pass it off anyway and create maps as they please. And I'm not going to sit here and lay blame, well, the Republicans started this first, or the Democrats started this first. You can go back all the way back to 2023, when New York had to redistrict some things, and then that, because the Justice Department told them so. And then in 2025, Texas was told the same thing, and then California decided, well, Texas can't do that, and it just you could just blame whoever. I don't care about blame in that regard. The fact is, we're here. And I would say that Indiana has been playing by the rules when no one else has. I look at Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, there's not one Republican district, yet Republicans consistently win about 40% of the vote. Okay? Fair. They've gerrymandered their state. There's not a majority district, by the way. For those of you who are going on and on about the Voting Rights Act piece being taken out, that we have to draw districts on race. No one should be drawing districts based on race. Look in Louisiana and look at that real long snake-like district that is so weird looking. And we should be drawing based on communities of like interest. And when I say communities, I'm not talking about race. I'm talking about, in Westfield and Carmel and Noblesville and Sheridan, we all kind of share a community. We share a county. There's rural parts. There's suburban parts. You go further north outside of Hamilton County. We're much more like each other than, let's say, us and Fort Wayne. So if there's a way to do it, we shouldn't be in the same district. That's how it should be. But Massachusetts ain't playing that way. And the Voting Rights Act, while I'm not saying was a bad thing at the time in which we were trying to right wrongs in this country after slavery and after the Civil War, and after that whole piece of history, which is a shameful piece of history, but we're past and beyond that now. There's no reason in modern America we should be doing anything based on race. We shouldn't be having college admissions based on race. It should be based on merit and whether or not a candidate could thrive given an opportunity. We shouldn't be drawing the same way congressional districts based on race, where we have to go from one end of a state to another when there are 8 other districts that cross by just to make sure we have a majority-minority district. But in Massachusetts, there isn't one. There is not one majority-minority district. And so, why should anybody else have to have that? And in Indiana, it's the same way. We have a 7-2 map. I don't believe that we should have done it mid-cycle. We should have waited till the next census. I do believe there are problems with the 2020 census data. And I don't know that if this is going to get fixed in 2030 because President Trump isn't going to be in office, and who knows who's going to be in. It could be Rubio. It could be Vance. It could be a Democrat. It certainly won't be Kamala Harris. but it may not be our party. So who knows how the Census Bureau is going to operate that. We may have the same problem that we had last time. But what I'll tell you is that I do believe that if Indiana is the only one or one of the few that are going to play by the rules and everyone else doesn't, we get screwed, then why shouldn't we do the same thing that everyone else is doing? And don't sit here and tell me today, well, Mike, that's like this majority district thing. This is just that. If you don't believe in that, that's just racist. No, 100% not. You don't get to play by a different set of rules and then force us to play by something entirely different. We're all going to play by the same rules. Districts should be drawn based on how a state wants to draw it, and that it should not include race in those calculations. And if we're not going to all play by the same rules of communities of like interest, then certainly we're going to do what the state of Massachusetts has done. And we're going to play it by political hot potato. And we're going to use political factors to maximize the number of seats that are safe or winnable for one party or the other. They're already doing it. Democrats have been doing it for decades, and it's been okay. And when Republicans do it, it's wrong, and it's racist, and it's whatever. No. We're not listening to that dribble anymore. Either we all play by the same rules, or we don't. And I think that's where we're at. And Indiana's primary elections were rooted in the revenge of Indiana not doing that this time around mid-cycle. Which I don't think we should have done it mid-cycle, but I do think we should draw the maps like everyone else is drawing them, which is partisan advantage. I'm there now. I didn't want to be. Nobody wants to be, but we're there now. But what I'll say about Indiana's primary elections being the nastiest, I also think that they were the most unfair. In some respects, there are some incumbents who voted against redistricting, which, by the way, redistricting is what brought the money here, but not one of these challenger candidates talked about redistricting, for the most part, in their election. They didn't. They made it about affordability. They made it about utility costs. They made it about gas prices. They made it about whatever Republican primary issue they wanted to write down, local issues and otherwise, which is how races should be. But all the money that came in that overwhelmed the system was brought in revenge. And so it really was both. But at the end of the day, it's money. The money was brought by the redistricting folks and Trump world, but the issues were local. And so I don't know that any of these races were won because somebody didn't vote to redistrict. Not that some voters maybe didn't do that, but the overall issue was that's not the case. Now, I believe that some of these lists of incumbents that lost needed to go. Several of them. I believe some of them were unfairly treated. I think of my friend Rick Niemeyer in the 6th State Senate District, who did vote against redistricting, but otherwise has been a clarion conservative voice, especially for rural Indiana, especially for the farmers of Indiana, who he has been, part of the farming community and an auctioneer. He has been that, and his father was that, and his family has been that for generations. And then there are others like Travis Holdman that just 100% acted like he was just God's gift to legislating and he needed to go. And Turning Point USA, which is the organization that I espoused to be when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, that this organization and this generation, that was their JFK moment. And there are some good people with that organization, but I also think that at the heart of it, grifters have absolutely seized on that. And they drove this business in local elections. We essentially had Washington, D.C. come and choose for Hoosiers who we were going to elect. Now, again, that doesn't mean that some of these incumbents didn't need to go. Some of these incumbents needed to stay. I'm so glad that Greg Good won. And some people are saying, well, he wouldn't have won if there hadn't been two Wilsons and all this game, which, first of all, hilarious. Whoever came up with that, hysterical. I love that. That is Lake County style politics. That's where I was born and raised. I think it's funny as heck. But he still had 54% of the vote. If you would have combined the two Wilsons together into one, they would have lost. And no, don't tell me that it disheartened other voters. The turnout was just the same as some of the other races. But these are the kind of people that need to stay. And TPUSA is doing a victory lap. And again, there were some people who worked hard. There were some people who just walked around and took pictures with famous people or with local operatives and didn't do any work and anything in between. I think of the Michelle Davis race. Greg Walker needed to go. He was an absolute squish, and he was getting out, and then after his soliloquy, in which he sobbed on the Senate floor, he decided to run for re-election. Well, that I'm not giving that one to TPUSA. I'm also not giving the really close race up in Fort Wayne area between the Darren Vaught, who is in local government up in Allen County area, and our Liz Brown, who, in my opinion, used to be a conservative. That race is razor thin. I don't know if it's going to a recount. I haven't read. I'm not sure. Same thing with Copenhagen Deary in the Lafayette area. I think it's like 3 or 4 vote difference. But the reason I'm talking about this is because I can't stand it that a bunch of DC know-it-alls hired a bunch of kids and hired a bunch of whatever to come and tell us in Indiana how we're going to do elections. Now, listen, I was a young punk in politics who thought I was invincible and thought I knew it all. And today, my conservatism hasn't changed. In fact, it's gotten stronger. It's just, I go about it differently. And you want to know the reason why I was so upset? So I was in one of the targeted districts. Jim Buck was my state senator. Tracy Powell beat him. I spent a lot of time talking to Tracy Powell. He's going to be a fantastic senator for my district. He really is. District 21 is going to have a conservative fighter, and I'm so excited. Jim Buck was 80 years old and was talking about not running and had told people he wasn't going to run. Then suddenly he got back in the race. And Jim Buck's a friend, and I love Jim, and I'm so sad that he lost. But one of the biggest problems I had with this race was not that we didn't have 2 good candidates. Again, I'm excited about Tracy Powell. But I watched, and this was not Tracy's fault. These were outside DC politic organizations coming and telling Hoosiers how we were going to vote and what candidates we were going to have. And if you didn't vote for their candidate, you were a rhino, and you were against Donald Trump, and you were worthless. They kept, in these commercials that were run by these PACs, whether it was TPUSA, whoever else was running it, kept calling Jim Buck pathetic and old and useless and senile. I'm going to tell you right now, get your crappy politics out of my state, Washington, D.C. We Hoosiers know far better about who we need to represent us than you do. And even though there were some great candidates, and even though some incumbents needed to go, I don't need you come bringing your swamp crap, your slime, into Hoosier races. We don't need you. We don't want you. And if anything was proven in this primary election, is that if you just overwhelm the system with money, you can run it and control it. Be darned what Hoosiers actually want and need. I think some of these races, I'm glad Tracy Powell won. I'm glad Greg Good won. I'm really glad that Michelle Davis won. I had a friend that was running in the Ellington Risk Boucher race. I'm really sad that Tanner didn't win. He was a good buddy of mine. Deary Copenhagen, I really hope Copenhagen pulls it out. I'm super glad that Holdman lost. I like Trevor DeVries. He goes to my old church, and he is cut from the same cloth that I am. But man, Dan Durnell is one of the people who gave me my start in politics. And darn it, I so hate that to see him lose by such a wide margin. And he's a friend of mine, and I will forever be grateful to him. So that shows you right there, I'm just all over the map in this. But again, that should have been for Hoosiers to decide, not for some DC special interest to lay $1 million into a state Senate race and overwhelm the thing and take it over and lie in the process. We didn't need to call Jim. We didn't need to be jerks. Again, that Buck Powell race, and it was not Powell's fault because they were PACs. And if you're not familiar with politics, campaigns cannot coordinate with political action committees. So they're running these ads without his consent. Jim Buck is useless. Jim Buck is senile. Jim Buck is old. Jim Buck is pathetic. Get out of town. You can run on his record. You can run that you think he's been there too long. You can run whatever. You don't need to pull that crap into our backyard. And I won't stand for it. And I don't care how many of the TPUSA folks, some who I call friends and some who I think are dumb, I don't care what you think. I do not care what you think about me. I will be your greatest ally when it's doing the right thing. Sitting there and winning a race by calling Jim Buck pathetic is pathetic. Do better. And DC, stay out of my state. Let's move on to the final piece today, and that's the midterms in Indiana and beyond. That kind of tracks in with what I was just talking about. Most of these state Senate races are going to be easily Republican. We're going to have a potential flip opportunity up in the northwest part of Marion County into Hamilton and Boone. That's where J.D. Ford, who is running now for U.S. Congress, vacating his Senate seat that he beat Mike Delph for. Mike Delph tried to come get that back, was unsuccessful. John Rockleshouse, who was the state senator kind of in between that time, he won the primary. And I'm so glad he did. I think he's going to be a better fit for that district. But the Democrats have a great flip opportunity up in the first. That district was, the last census, a 50-50 district. Dan Darnell won it. Trevor DeFries is far more conservative when it comes to especially his social stances, which, again, more aligned with me. And some more, as I was talking to a buddy yesterday before the recording of this show, the first district, which encompasses like northern St. John and kind of goes up into like southern Munster, gets Highlands and Griffith, a lot of that blue collar has moved towards us. And the northern part of St. John, the town in Lake County, a lot of Republicans, conservative Republicans from Illinois who have been disillusioned with the politics there and disillusioned with the high taxes and disillusioned with J.B. Pritzker have moved. And so, in 2024, Trump won that district by 6%. So it was a +6 for Republicans. Now that's tight, especially with high gas prices and affordability and Trump in Iran and Trump in Venezuela. And again, I agree with a lot of the pieces of this, but that I'm not every voter. And I would say that, it's going to make it real tight. And then you bring in somebody who's far more conservative. Now, the Democrats don't have a really big name there. They have some UAW union boss guy who looks the part. It's kind of funny. Slicked back hair, and I got nothing to say about hair. And who knows, maybe he'll rally some of the union folks, but a lot of the blue collar folks have moved towards the Republicans because the Democrats have absolutely just assumed they'd always have their support, but they've never actually been for the working man. They're for the elites. The perception is that now. And blue-collar workers, my dad has always been a Republican, but he's always been a blue-collar worker, and he sees that every day, that the union folk are flocking towards the Republicans. Now, whether we can hold on to that, this Iran war, while I agree with the premise that Iran does not need a nuclear weapon, and we have never taken the actual actions needed to take out the Ayatollah and to do the things that need to be done. And my position on Iran has been we either needed to go all the way or we needed to stay out. When I say all the way, I don't say boots on the ground. We didn't need to invade Tehran. Bomb all the nuclear sites, take out their military, take out their leadership, and take the Strait of Hormuz from them and allow it to be just like a Panama situation, and that there are rules and stipulations and all those kind of things. And because Iran will hold it hostage. And now we're just like trying to play this cat and mouse game that we really need to be careful of. But that has driven up gas prices, and there's all the affordability issues on utilities and groceries. And inflation is not nearly as bad than when Biden was in power. But if you're explaining, you're losing. Now, Trump's in power. The prices didn't go down. Prices continue to go up by a much less rate, but that happens. And you don't have any explanation for it because any explanation you give, you're already losing the rate, the narrative there. And Democrats, for the first time, have seized on that because Democrats are not about affordability. I was just reading an article that Governor Spanberger in Virginia, this has nothing to do with Indiana, but this is more of the national piece of this, came in as a moderate Democrat on affordability, and she absolutely shellacked her opponent in that race. And the first thing they did is introduce in their General Assembly, in their House of Delegates, and in their Senate, 50 new taxes, 50 new taxes on things from gym memberships and investments, perhaps, and dog walking gig workers, and all these just useless taxes. Now, don't get me wrong, America is far overtaxed. We have too many agencies on too many things, serving too many special interests and too many people, when government needs to be far cut, especially at the federal level. And so what that proves to me, though, is that Governor Spanbarger and other people like her who are going to play this, I'm for affordability, I'm for the working man, and then the first thing they do is come and raise taxes on them. They're speaking out of both sides of their mouth. But because Republicans are in power and we're not doing anything about it, we're worried about investigating Comey, and we're now worried about, trying to finish up Iran, which maybe this was the plan all along. I don't know. People will say, he has no plan. Well, how do you know? You don't know whether he has a plan or not. You don't know what the plan is. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he does. But I know you don't know. I don't know. And that's really changing the tide. I just saw that the congressional generic ballot, whether you would just generally vote for a no-name Republican or no-name Democrat, Democrats are up by 10. Certainly that'll tighten. If we don't get these gas prices down, if we don't start turning this around, if we don't start getting a hold of this inflation stuff, if we don't get a hold of the Fed continuing to keep interest rates artificially high, which hurt the economy and hurt the job market, though the job market, we had experts were stunned again when the job numbers were far beyond the experts' expectations. It's because they don't know. But that interest rate coming down proves that we have an opportunity to really continue to push that golden age. And I'm not trying to be here and be a Trumpian, but I'm saying that there's an opportunity here for us to take off because the economy has been largely strong despite the boat anchor provided to us by the Fed. Indiana mostly is going to stay about the same. It's going to be a 7-2 congressional. We'll probably hold we'll certainly hold the Senate supermajority. Whether or not we have 39 seats or 41 seats in the Senate is left up for grabs. I think the Republicans in the House will hold their supermajority in Indiana. And it's just going to be up to Republicans to message us, stay on message, lower costs, lower inflation, get a hold of the Fed, and stop the squirrel on the things that we really need to be talking about. Thanks so much for coming back to me. So great to be back in the saddle. Can't not wait to continue this show. We have been 1 year together. Thank you so much for being here. You can listen to